Representative Baker. Representative Baker, would you like to move your bill?
Madam Chair and committee members, yes. I'd like to move the House File 2144 to be placed on the General Register.
Oh, sorry, House File, oops.
Did I get the wrong one?
No, I report so.
14, I'm sorry, House File 1422 to be moved to the General Register. Thank you.
So House File 1422 has been moved by Representative Baker to be placed on the General Register. Representative Baker, would you like to proceed with your testimony, please?
Yes, and thank you, members, for being here so late. This is a bill that we also heard last year, and I'd like to actually present an amendment to you, Madam Chair, that actually makes the bill better. It's to my to our work after having the bill heard here last year. We were working with the School Nurses Association. We made some changes. So I'd like to include the A1 amendment, Madam Chair.
Representative Baker moves the A1 amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? A1 amendment has been adopted.
A year ago, members, my constituent brought this to me. Her name was Ruth Schmitz. She's not with us today, but she brought this issue for me as we'd introduced it in the bill. Ruth had shared with this committee last session throughout elementary and high school. She was responsible, really, for teaching her teachers how to respond to seizures. She shared with you the isolation that she experienced and wondered what her education might have been like if she hadn't had to focus on teaching her school staff how to keep her safe. Seizure first aid is a basic protocol that anyone can be trained on, and something that I personally completed this last session. There needs to be there's a need for seizure smart schools, and that is reflected in the bill with co-authors. This is not an issue specific to a single community. House File 1422 has bipartisan statewide support. We've heard a lot of feedback in the past, again, from last year, and with that amendment that we've approved today, the School Nurses Association has now withdrawn any opposition to the bill. With that, Madam Chair and members, I'd like to turn it over, first of all, to our testifiers, and we're going to move it along here pretty quick, and we've got our extra special guest, Rachel, here today, too, at the very end. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll move it along. Thank you.
Wonderful. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for having us here today. My name is Jamila Pickett, and I'm the Senior Program Coordinator at the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota of Education. In my role, I oversee our Seizure Smart Schools program. I'm here today to request your support for House File 1422, which will ensure school personnel are equipped with the tools and knowledge to provide safe and thriving environments for children living with seizures. When I began working at the foundation, I met with a high school history teacher who shared an eye-opening perspective. She said, every year a student has a seizure in one of my classes, and every year I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Stories like this are why the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota supports Seizure Smart Schools legislation. But the need for this legislation does not simply just come from stories. It also comes from statistics. 1 in 10 people will have a seizure in their lifetime, and 1 in 26 people will develop epilepsy. Epilepsy is a common medical condition. HF 1422 puts student safety first and is comprised of 3 components. Identified school staff would receive seizure first aid education. For students with epilepsy, school personnel and the child's guardian collaborate to determine appropriate seizure response measures for that student, and prescribed medication, including rescue medication, is administered to students with epilepsy by a trained nurse or staff member. The bill is not introducing the need for additional paperwork. If the components of this legislation are included in a student's existing IEP, IHP, 504 plan, or other school plan, the school will have a seizure action plan in place and will not need to complete additional paperwork. Epilepsy is the 4th most common neurological disorder. Because it is caused by abnormal activity in the brain, seizures can affect any process in your brain coordinates. Seizure signs may include temporary confusion, staring, uncontrollable jerking movements, loss of consciousness or awareness, and psychic symptoms such as fear and deja vu. Providing school staff with appropriate information about recognizing and responding to seizures increases staff confidence in how to respond to a seizure, helps students stay safe and healthy during the school day, and provides parents and guardians with peace of mind when their children are at school. I will now turn it over to Tricia Zeller and her daughter, Rachel. Tricia will share some of her family's personal story and illustrate why House File 1422 is so important. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I urge you to support House File 1422.
Thank you, Ms. Pickett. Go ahead and state your name for the record and proceed.
Tricia Zeller. Thank you. Appreciate you, Madam Chair and committee, for allowing me to testify today. Amongst other many labels, I may be given a professional, a taxpayer, vice president of the board of the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota. The most significant label, the one I covet the most, is mother. Joining me today is my daughter, Rachel. She is 13. She's a 7th grader at Pioneer Ridge Middle School in Chanhassen. She's energetic, humorous, and tenacious. She loves Dalmatians and just recently earned her advanced brown belt in martial arts. Rachel also has a genetic abnormality that creates multiple comorbidities or diagnoses, the most material being pediatric myoclonic seizures. Without any medication control, Rachel has over 300 seizures a day. Fortunately, the vast majority of Rachel's seizures are controlled through a cocktail of medications, all with their own unique and problematic side effects, giving her a pill box more suited for a senior citizen than a teenager. As you've just heard from Jamila and ongoing advocacy efforts, 60,000 Minnesotans have epilepsy or have experienced a seizure. That's 1 in 10 of us. But what I'm sharing today is a story that takes it down to the one person in this case, my child, impacted by this complex and varied neurologic disease state. Last Wednesday, just 9-10 days ago, on the 19th, I received a phone call at work from the school nurse at Rachel's school asking me to come pick her up. Why, you may ask? Well, because the school administration decided to test the emergency lighting system in the school. Some epileptics, Rachel included, are light sensitive and can and will have significant seizure activity due to flashing lights. Rachel at 13 is aware of this concern, and as soon as she saw the flashing lights, requested to go hide out in the nurse's office. The nurse, who although is compassionate and engaged with Rachel, mainly due to Rachel's deep, deep love of Band-Aids, did not have the training or knowledge of what to do with the multiple children in her office, all epileptics, all reporting either not feeling well or scared of pending seizures. And the best course of action was to send Rachel home. Thankfully, Rachel did not have a seizure at school last Wednesday, but next time we may not be that lucky. I do not want to come before this committee in a year and refer to this legislation with the title of a child's name, a child who died at school due to a seizure because no one knew what to do, very similar in the creation and naming of the Alex Smith Emergency Insulin Act. Today, you can choose to be proactive, you can choose to be smart, and you can lead your colleagues to support HF 1422 and enact this legislation protecting all of Minnesota's students. If Seizure Smart Schools saves one child, it saves the world. If one Minnesota's children receiving the proper emergency treatment and care when a seizure happens, it is worth it. This is not a partisan issue or concern. This is a moral obligation. This is the right thing to do. As a parent, I want to not be scared. I don't want to worry. And I want to make sure she comes home every day.
Go ahead, Rachel, whenever you're ready.
Thanks. Thanks, madam. Hello, my name is Rachel Zeller, and I'm 13, and I'm in 7th grade. I have epilepsy. I take lots of pills every day to help me not have seizures, but I still have them. I wish they would just go away. I go to a lot of medical appointments. I hope to be a canine officer, police officer someday, and to be able to drive. I get worried at school about having seizures and people helping me. I was very scared when the flashing lights went off at school. My parents tell them not to have blinking lights and how to help me, but they don't understand. Seizure Smart School would make me feel better and safer at school. I hope you will support this bill and make my days a little bit easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I have another testifier. Actually, did you have any not final comments, but maybe we'll just do the last testifier and,
Thank you. No, that'll be all for our testifiers, Madam
okay,
Chair.
thank you.
Good job, you guys.
Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Valerie Dolan, and I'm with the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. And I am to save you from having numerous of us come down. We kind of do double duty for each other. So I also am speaking on behalf of the few education groups that are left here today. I thank Representative Baker for his willingness to discuss this bill with us yesterday. I appreciate the amendment. It alleviates a lot of our concerns, and I was very interested in the testimony today that expressed that school districts would not have to complete any additional paperwork, that some of these things are already covered in the 504 plans, which Representative Baker and I talked about yesterday. So I would just like to hope that we can continue to work together and maybe have a conversation offline about their understanding of what that means and maybe some clarifying language, because we would like to make sure that duplicative work does not have to be done. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan. Anybody else in the audience wanting to testify? Any member questions? Representative Bierman.
Madam Chair, Representative Baker. First, to the testifiers, thank you for being here today. That was very good information, and your author of this bill gave me good information, and I would just wanted to thank you last year when you introduced me to the informational hearing up there and taught me quite a bit. Legislators, like educators, are needing to learn all the time, and you've done a great job with this bill, so I just wanted to say thank you for that. I did have one question, which is it's on this bill, but it's a little maybe off the track somewhat, but I just wanted to know in your work on the bill if you'd had any conversation about it, which is some seizure medications for certain students, they are on medical cannabis. And my understanding is medical cannabis can't go into the school. Was there any discussion about that, how to work around that or not?
Representative Baker.
You know, Madam Chair and Representative Bierman, I have had some very brief conversations actually earlier today about that with some advocates that want to perhaps bring that forward for that exact question. Medical cannabis is being used successfully with a lot of places in Minnesota. I have learned a great deal about that, and I think even just I think it's the CBD product that's working for a lot of students right now. What's happening is moms or dads have to come to the school, pick up the child, take them off school grounds to be able to give that medication and then bring them back, and that's sometimes more than once a day. So we are now recognizing this is something that we need to examine. It's not part of this bill. It's something that we can maybe look at later, but this is something that as we are learning and understanding more of the medical cannabis benefits, it has to be cared for carefully outside of the family and outside of anybody because it's still considered a Schedule I drug. So we have to recognize that through the FDA and how we deal with that, but that is yet to come, and that is something that I will continue to listen about, and if advocates want to bring it to me, I'm happy to help that along if that's something we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further questions? Members? Representative Baker renews his motion that House File 1422 as amendment be placed on the general registry, and I know that you'll work with the folks that still have some concerns before we move forward. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. House File 1422 as amended is recommended for placement on the general register.